This presentation will help you to complete the research section of the NEA 1, the food investigation. Here is a table and it shows you that the research section A is worth a maximum of 6 marks. The investigation, that's section B, is worth 15 marks, and the analysis and evaluation is worth 9 marks, and that's section C. Altogether, that's 30 marks, or 15% of your final GCSE exam. The teacher will use this table when they mark your research element of your NEA 1. So to get top marks, you need to make sure that the information is relevant, detailed and concise, and that its detailed explanation shows a high level of understanding of how the research has been used to inform the practical investigation, and that it's planned and justified a detailed investigation related to the research with a clear and focused hypothesis or prediction. I will talk about these now. Section A is all about the ingredients and how they work, and it's worth 6 marks. You will investigate the working characteristics and functional and chemical properties of certain ingredients. This research will help you to state hypotheses, which are predictions, and carry out practical investigations. An example of a task given would be investigate the functional and chemical properties of different raising agents used to make bread. Firstly, you'll need to analyse the task. You need to highlight the key words in the task and then think about what the task is asking you to do. So we've got our title, investigate the functional and chemical properties of different raising agents used to make bread. So I'm going to do an analysis, and my analysis here is to be able to answer the food investigation task. I will research the functional and chemical properties of raising agents used to make bread. My research will mainly focus on biological and chemical raising agents, such as yeast, bicarbonate of soda and baking powder, as these ingredients can be used to make bread. I will also include my prior learning relating to bread making, so don't forget to add anything you know about the subject. You can write that down and then do your research. When marking the research, it will be checked that the information is relevant, detailed and concise into how and why ingredients work. In other words, do not waffle and talk about anything that does not relate to your title. Research should mostly be about how and why ingredients work and must link to each hypothesis, your prediction. You can use diagrams to help explain the working characteristics, functions and chemical properties of the ingredients. It's a good idea to annotate them as well, if possible. Also include food science terms, things like fermentation, and discuss what's meant by it. So you'll be investigating the functional and chemical properties of, for instance, different raising agents. So the functional and working properties of ingredients, basically what do the ingredients do? How do they work? What is the science behind how they work? And don't forget to use food science terms. The chemical properties, which chemicals are contained within the, for instance, raising agents? Baking powder contains bicarbonate of soda and cream of tartar. How do these chemicals react with other ingredients, such as water? Do some research around the subject. So, for instance, what are the ingredients needed to make bread and the different types of bread? Also, factors that affect the bread or the ingredients, such as different temperatures of water and their effect on yeast. This research will help you to develop each hypothesis and investigation. A hypothesis is a prediction, e.g., strong flour is the best flour for bread making. You will need 2 or 3 of them, which will result in 2 or 3 investigations. A hypothesis should Explain what you expect will happen. So I've stated that strong flour will be the best for making bread. You need to be clear and specific, and it needs to be something you can test and measure. This is why you will carry out investigations. For instance, you can test if strong flour is actually the best. It needs to contain an independent and dependent variable. An independent variable would be, for instance, the type of flour used. The dependent variable would be the outcome, the size of the bread created. Control variables, that's using the same amount of ingredients and using the same equipment to carry out the experiment. Here's an example of the type of table you could include within your NEA 1. So it's showing you the variables, the independent, dependent and controls, and also investigation 1, investigation 2, investigation 3. There needs to be a detailed explanation showing a high level of understanding of how the research has been used to inform the practical investigation. So ensure that your research is thorough and in depth to ensure a good understanding of how the ingredients work. Make sure the hypothesis and investigations link to the research. This is important. Do not carry out an investigation, for instance, about the effect of salt on the action of yeast if you haven't discussed this in the research. Analysis and planning the investigations. How do you plan to carry out your investigations? What equipment will you use and how will you do it? You need to write this down. You will need to take photographs and ensure your name and candidate numbers are shown in them. You can work in groups when you carry out the experiment. However, your report writing should be your own work. So the person marking will make sure that it's planned and justified, so the reasons why you're doing the investigations, and that they relate to the research with a clear and focused hypothesis or prediction for each investigation. So for instance, here's an example. My research has shown that yeast is the most popular choice in bread making as a high success rate. I will test this by comparing the texture of bread made using all 3 raising agents that I am investigating. I will then use a sensory evaluation test to compare the taste and texture. I will also use balloons to see how much carbon dioxide yeast produces and how sugar influences it. At what point is it too much sugar or too little? Additionally, I will use different temperatures of water when using yeast to make bread to see how it changes the process of bread making and the final product. In the next video, I will discuss section B, the investigation section that's worth 15 marks.